Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriritam Kalmashapaham Sravanamangalam Srimadaatatam Bhuvi Grananti Bhurida Jana. So in the last class, we had a discussion on the concept of Leela and Yogamaya, which we found is essential to enter into the discussion on Raganuga Bhakti. So this, in short, what is this, the concept of Yogamaya and Leela? The concept of Yogamaya, as we were indicating in the last class, is there in the Bhagavad Gita as well as in Bhagavatam. But the concept of Leela is something very specific to Bhagavatam. It's not there in Bhagavad Gita. So what's this Yogamaya and Leela means? Now this Yogamaya, the first let us come to the term Yogamaya, as has been enunciated in Shrimad Bhagavatam, that whenever there is the need for establishing religion, dharma sangsthapana, the God has to, the Ishvara has to incarnate again and again as per the need of the age. Now we incarnate as an ordinary jiva because we are forced by the gunamaya, that our samskaras, our tendencies, that gets ripened into vasanas, and as per the vasanas, as per these desires, the desires which are predominant, that decides our next birth. So we are almost forced by our desires, by our vasanas, by our samskaras to take birth, and that's what is the idea of the gunamaya. And what is yogamaya? So as we were mentioning, this term itself is an oxymoron, as if two apparently exactly diametrically opposite words. The meaning of the words are opposite. Yoga and Maya. These two have been clubbed together. So whenever such two opposite meaning words are clubbed together to form a word, that's called oxymoron. So it's apparently they are contradictory. What's the idea of yoga? That when we get rid of the Maya, when we get rid of the ignorance, then again we get united. Yoga means to get united, to be in union. We get again united by with ourselves. And if we are bhaktas, we believe that the Atman gets united with the Paramatman. So this unification is called yoga. And what is Maya? It's just the opposite. That because of ignorance, we have forgotten our real nature. That way we look at the world is not as it is. That I think I am this psychophysical existence. Actually, it is not so. The word Maya, Ya means Yatha Yatha. Ma is a negation. That what I am seeing is exactly not that. Because of ignorance, I am seeing something else. So it is just the opposite of the yoga. Because of ignorance, I got separated from myself, and yoga speaks of unification. That when that ignorance has vanished, it has fallen off, I get united with myself. Now these two words have been clubbed together to form the word Yogamaya. What it means? That as per the need of the age, the God has to incarnate again and again. Now he is resorting to his own Maya by his own will. He is not forced. There is no factor which can force him to take birth. Out of compassion, by his own will, he is resorting to his own Maya and taking birth. But at the same time, he is never forgetful about his real nature. So that's why this is a different type of Maya. He is always in communion with his real nature, though he has resorted to the Maya to appear as a person in flesh and bones. So now we will understand the idea of this Yoga Maya. So now when God incarnates, he is aware. Throughout the Bhagavad Gita you will find Krishna is always identifying himself with that absolute reality. That I am Purushottama. He is never forgetful about his real nature. And Arjuna also realizes Krishna as that absolute Lord who has been incarnated in the form of this Krishna, what he is seeing now in front of his eyes. So you'll find in the Vishwarup Darshana, when the ignorance falls off, he sees the Vishwarupa of Krishna. And then Arjuna gets bewildered. He says, I don't want to see this because it's not something very easy to relate to that. It needs a high spiritual elevation. Even Arjuna wants to be bewildered by the Maya. So he's asking there, please again, let me see the form with which I am habituated. So in the 11th chapter we see that. So there we find that God is never forgetful about his nature, and the devotee is also relating with a sense of awe that he is that supreme reality and I am his devotee. So this idea we find in the Bhagavad Gita. But in Bhagavatam we find another very interesting idea. There we find that both with the help of that same Yoga Maya, God himself sometimes, not always, sometimes forgets that he is the Lord. He is playing the role of a son, of a friend, of a lover. There's various roles he is playing. And with whom he is playing. So here the Bhagavatam we will find it indicates a very interesting thing. These gopis, the gopas, they are not ordinary beings. In the past many births, they have done intense austerity. They have purified themselves. They have gone beyond the Maya, behind the Guna Maya, and they know their real nature. But now, to relate to the divine, they ask to be deluded by the spatial Maya. Let's just see this wonderful thing, this paradox. With our sadhana, we get rid of we get rid of the Guna Maya, and then as a devotee to commune with the divine, the devotee wants to be deluded by that Yoga Maya. Why? That if you are always aware of the splendor of the divine, it becomes almost impossible to relate to the divine through love. Just the way we were giving that example, maybe a very influential person, a judge of the Supreme Court, when he is performing his occupation, he's in his job, he's highly revered. People have a sense of awe and reverence. The same person, when he comes back to his own home, in his own house, now he is dealing with his own children. For the time being, he forgets that he is the judge of the Supreme Court. And the child is also not aware of that fact, that my father is holds a great position. He knows he is my father. And then only that love is possible. If we are aware of the splendor of that Lord, we can never relate to him through love and devotion. So here that concept of Leela comes. Very nicely Sri Ramakrishna used to say, as we were indicating in the last class, what is to say? That an elephant has two sets of teeth. The tusk is also a teeth. And he has some inner teeth, which is not visible. But that's the thing which is used for chewing the food, the vegetation. The external tusk may be helpful for the protection, and mostly it is a show. But the inner teeth is for chewing the food. So similarly, Avatara, as has been indicated in Bhagavad Gita, with that splendor, he is there to punish the wicked, establish the religion, and protect the virtuous one. Paritranaya sadhunam, vinashaya cha duskritam, dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. And Sri Ramakrishna how nicely is saying that this is just an external task. It is a show. But actually the God himself to satisfy the intense desire of an highly exalted soul who has already cultured devotion, and devotion has now become Raganuga or Ragatmika. His nature has become, he has converted his nature. That love is something which is spontaneous. To fructify, to materialize that love, that communion through love, God incarnates through Yoga Maya and makes such a devotee forgetful about his splendor, so that now he can relate through devotion. So in this Bhagavatam, this idea of this Rasa Leela, Yashoda relating to his child Krishna, the Gopas relating to this child Krishna as a friend. Here we find both are as if not aware of the divine splendor, and that makes the love very intense. So this is the wonderful concept of Leela which we find in Bhagavatam, and Bhagavatam stresses that to enjoy that bliss, that Leela, that's the real purpose. This to protect the virtuous, to punish the wicked, to establish the religion, that's just an external. The real purpose is to enjoy the bliss of devotion for which he incarnates. So now you will understand, Yogamaya is a broad term with the help of which Lord descends. After descending, most of the time he is aware of that splendor. There Leela is not possible, as we see in Bhagavad Gita. There's Leela term is not mentioned there. Yogamaya is there. But where Leela is possible, where God is as if playing hide and seek with his own real nature. Sometimes he himself forgets and makes those devotees who have already perfected souls, or already perfect souls, make them forget, so that they can relate through that intense devotion and love. So this is the wonderful concept of Leela which we find in Bhagavatam. Now to relate to the incarnation, it's only possible for those antarangas, the inner circle devotees, those who have already perfected themselves. So for that, the sadhana bhakti has to ripen into Raganuga bhakti. What sadhana bhakti that we were studying till now, this is 9 practices. We will come to it again in a short way, in a gist. Those 9 practices we were practicing to develop devotion, with the help of which now I have developed Raganuga bhakti. What it means? That I have developed some raga, attachment, love, devotion. That is the raga. Anuga means followed by. So now I don't have to use my willpower to practice all those 9 types of devotion. I have developed love, and my devotion follows that love. So that's how we find that for one who is established in Raganuga bhakti, he has transcended all those sadhana, the practices, and his bhakti has ripened to Raganuga bhakti. Now this idea of this Raganuga bhakti, that's what we will try to understand today from the perspective of the yoga's philosophy. Because this yoga philosophy has a great role to understand the philosophy of bhakti. It's a basis with the help of which we can understand bhakti. So Let's try to go to, and try to understand from the yoga standpoint certain terminologies referring to which we will gradually come to the idea of this Raganuga Bhakti. Now in the Yoga Shastra, where it starts with, the very second sutra, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is what? The suppression of all the Chitta Vrittis, all the pulsations in your mind stuff. That my mind is constantly breaking into these thought waves. These vrittis are the waves. To suppress that is the aim of yoga. So when you suppress that, then what happens? That ultimately, when all the vrittis are stopped, then what happens? Then swarupe avasthanam. Then you get established in your swarupa, in yourself. So that's the idea of yoga. Now, this vritti, this is a very important word. Vritti means what? This thought waves. It's always there in our mind. Now, this vrittis in the Yoga Shastra has been categorized into two categories, broad categories. What are these two categories? One is called aklishta vritti and another is called klishta vritti. So this technical terms, but if you give bit attention and try to understand, you will find that in what philosophy the Bhakti Shastra is based. These yoga terms are very important. Klishta, aklishta. What aklishta means? With klesha, without klesha. That the thing which is along with klesha is klishta. The thing which is bereft of klesha is aklishta. There is no klesha, aklishta. With klesha is klishta. Now these two types of vritti, with klesha, without klesha. Now you will say, what is klesha? In the Yoga Shastra again say that for afflictions, klesha means afflictions. And they say there are 5 types of afflictions. That the afflictions means the thing which makes us suffer. So what are these 5 afflictions? The root cause of affliction is ignorance. This avidya, this ignorance. Because of that ignorance, what the next thing follows is asmita, the ego. That I have forgotten my real nature. I identify myself with this body-mind complex, and that from that the ego is generated. So because of that ignorance comes asmita. From asmita, the other 3 follows. Raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. The moment I get identified with this psychophysical existence, now from that comes all attachment. Whatever is favorable for the sustenance of my psychophysical existence, I develop attachment to that. Whatever is not favorable, I develop aversion. And as I am tremendously attached to this body-mind complex, I am afraid of its annihilation, its death. That speaks of abhinivesha. So these 3, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, these are the effect of this avidya and asmita. So we will find in our life, all the vrittis in our mind are either along with these kleshas, this raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, or without that. So though if the vrittis, thought waves in the mind, are without this klesha, without any attachment, without any aversion, that is aklishta. And if those vrittis in the mind are along with those afflictions, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, they are klishta. With example is the best way to understand. Now I am sitting here, in front of me there is a table. So my mind is constantly breaking into vrittis. So whenever I perceive something, there will be a content of that vritti. That vritti will be reflecting something. What I am seeing, that will be reflected. What I am perceiving, that will be reflected. So when I am looking at the table, so what's reflected in that vritti? The table. So it gives that, the moment the thing which gets reflected in the vritti, that gives the knowledge. So immediately that jnana, that knowledge comes. What's the knowledge? Yes, this is the table. Do I have any sense of attachment or aversion for it? No. It just gives me just pure knowledge. So this jnana vritti is aklishta. It is not in any way associated with the kleshas called raga, dvesha, vinivesha, attachment, aversion, fear. It's not attached with that. Now see, for the first time, someone took me to this donut king shop. And I have never tested this donut. I sit, he orders for the donut. I just test it. I find it's wonderful. So what happens? This knowledge, the taste of the donut is the knowledge. But the vrittis are now reflecting the taste of the donut. That's also any type of knowledge. But now that is getting associated with raga. I like it. It's not like just watching the table. It now has got associated with that attachment, raga. So now this vritti becomes klishta. So now it's very easy to understand that all our thought waves, which are associated with the emotive faculty, with feelings, with emotions, they are all klishta. Which are in no way associated with feelings, affections, they are aklishta. They are pure jnana vritti. Now this jnana vritti, that is in no way cause for our bondage. When we say yoga chitta vritti nirodha, that vritti speaks actually of all this klishta vritti. Aklishta vritti doesn't create any sort of bondage. Now whenever there is a vritti, another thing happens. What happens? That knowledge which is generated, that is never lost. It remains stored in our subconscious mind as samskara. Samskara speaks of this latent impressions. Whatever knowledge I gather, it's not lost. Immediately it gets stored in the subconscious mind as those sublateral impressions, subliminal impressions. They are called as samskara. Now I have tested this donut. And now I come out from the shop, I just go back to my home. Next day I get again busy with my day-to-day activities. If you are a professional person, you go to your job, you are busy with your work, and you forget about the donut. But has it been totally erased from your mind? No, it's there as the samskara. Now after most probably a month, by chance you are passing by that same shop. Accidentally, you are going to some place and the shop comes by the side of the road and you see it. Now just immediately what will happen? Just by perceiving that thing which was stored in your mind, the impression, oh, these donuts are wonderful. This impression is already stored. I have forgotten, but it was there. Now this comes back again to the conscious mind in the form of memory, isn't it? The thing which was stored, getting the favorable circumstances, it comes back as memory. So from samskara comes this smriti. Smriti is the memory. And from this memory what happens? Now I will find in spite of any conscious decision, already has started moving towards the shop. So it results in karma, isn't it? The moment the smriti comes back, that the idea, this donut is very tasty, I like it. And it immediately drags me towards it. I go, I buy, I sit down, I eat. It results in karma. So all this, from where this karma generates? From all these klishta vrittis. As all these klishta vrittis again results in bhoga vritti. I want to enjoy. Now once I enjoy, I go and test it, then what happens? These impression accumulates. And then it remains in my mind as a fixed stimuli response conditioning, which is called as vasana. These are the very specific technical terms in yoga, vasana. So these vasanas are the cause of my repeated birth, life after life. How it happens, we are not going to the details of that. That Yoga Sutra again deals with that. But we can understand that these are the vasanas which impels me to take birth again and again. Klishta vritti. Now what's the way out? Yoga Sutra says there is another type of, apart from the jnana vritti, there is another type of aklishta vritti. What is that? They call it pragya vritti. Pragya. Pragya means wisdom. That if I constantly try to remind in my mind that I am not the body, not the mind, not the senses, I am the Atman. I am detached from all these sensate pleasures of life. I am the Atman. I am the Atman. This thought is the pragya vritti. This helps me to get rid of all the kleshas. So, this is also a type of aklishta vritti. With this idea in the background. So that's what aklishta vritti. There are two types. One is the jnana vritti, that like that this knowledge of the table. It neither gives me pleasure nor gives me pleasure. It's just pure knowledge. That is a type of aklishta vritti. This jnana vritti. Another type of aklishta vritti is the pragya vritti. That I have resorted to the spiritual practice and I am constantly discriminating between the real and the unreal. And I always try to contemplate on the fact that I am that Atman. I am not the body, not the mind, not the senses. So this thought is the pragya vritti. That gradually helps me to get rid of all my afflictions, and that's why this is also a type of aklishta vritti. Now klishta vritti, all those vrittis which was associated with all our these feelings, emotions, with our desires. So these are the klishta vritti, which results in bondage, because at last it is creating the sanskara from the, whenever the favorable circumstances come, the samskara comes back as smriti. That results in karma, and this karma again creates karma sanskara, and that gets converted into vasana, and that vasana is the cause of this repeated birth and death. So with this as the background, now let us try to understand where bhakti stands. Is bhakti a aklishta vritti? No, it is a klishta vritti. It is not the pragya vritti, that just like a jnani or just like a yogi I am contemplating, I am not the body, not the mind, I am the Atman. There is no question of bhakti there. Bhakti, what's bhakti? I try to develop tremendous attachment to my Ishta. So here, raga, this attachment is there. So this we have to always remember, that bhakti, in this from the yoga standpoint, is not aklishta, it is klishta. But this klishta vritti is something which at last will lead to this, what is this? Para bhakti, supreme devotion. And that also is considered as a very fulfilling spiritual evolution. Before we proceed further, let us try to recollect some very words of Sri Ramakrishna, very simple words that will help us to understand that how this klishta vritti, in the form of my love for my Ishta, at last can lead to this para bhakti, supreme devotion. As we have indicated already, that bhakta doesn't want liberation. They want to be eternally associated with their Ishta through devotion. That's the para bhakti, supreme devotion, where the devotion has become spontaneous in that type of devotion. So here, that we have to understand that Sri Ramakrishna has a very nice sentence. He says, this attachment for Ishware Anurag, this attachment for God, is not to be considered as attachment. And then he gives some very simple examples. What he says? Hinche shak, shaker moddhe noy. The greens. When you have some, there is some stomach is indisposed. You have some diet, you have indigestion. Because of the indigestion, now the doctor says that avoid any greens for few days. But there are few greens, they are like herbs, like medicine. They actually help in our digestion. They have a therapeutic effect. All the greens are good. But when I have some, this they nowadays call irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, the doctors may ask me to avoid. But there are certain like hinche shak, a particular type of green that actually helps. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna is saying this particular type of green, though it is green, is not to be considered as green. Anything sweet creates acidity. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Michri mishtir moddhe noy. Michri is the sugar candy, crystallized sugar. Anything which is sweet creates acidity. But in Ayurveda, they say that when you are having acidity, you just dilute the sugar crystals, the candies, and the diluted sugar crystals, that Michri Sharbat, that liquid acts as an antacid. It cools your system. So that's Michri Mishtir Moddhe noy. So though devotion is a klishta vritti, it at last leads you to something which is aklishta. So how that happens? Just the way for the first time when I had the donut by chance, I have no plan. I went, I liked the taste. Similarly, by God's grace, it so happens that I had no plan. Suddenly, most probably my friend was going to some place where there was some satsang, some religious discourse was going on, and he just took me there. I had no such plans. I just go and sit for the first time, and in that environment unknowingly soaks into me. It just gradually, I get soaked into that environment, and the words which I hear, I start liking. Just the way that when you had the donut for the first time, you had no idea what it is. So here also, you developed a raga, attachment for it. So that will create samskara. So this is the idea which we will find in Bhagavatam. Very nicely it has been mentioned. What it is saying? Very nicely. That in the 11th book, Bhagavatam has 12, total 12 books. The 11th book, the 11th canto, the 11th book. There in the 20th chapter, the 8th verse, what it says, Yadrichaya mat kathadau jata sraddhastu yah puman na nirvinna na atisakto bhakti yogasya siddhidah. Very nice. Yadrichaya. By grace it happened. There was no plan. Yadrichaya. Mat kathadau. In my katha. Katha means his pastimes, his life, his teachings. All this speaks of katha. That God incarnates. He lives that in this world. He is living his life. So that life, his pastimes, his life, that's the katha. His teachings, that's the katha. And that's being discussed there. So I suddenly went there, I found those discussion on the life and teachings of the avatar is going on. And I hear. So that's the mat katha. When my katha, when what happens? Jata sraddhastu. You develop sraddha. Jata. For the jata means anything which is born. For the first time that the sraddha is born. Jata sraddhastu yah puman. A human being, puman is a human, in whom, by my grace, because there was no plan, it happened so, that you have developed a little sraddha in the words of the divine. It has created a samskara. So this samskara, at the beginning, will it eradicate all your worldly samskaras? No, it is still there. Along with that, it is coexisting. So what happens? Now you will find the attachment to the world is slowly falling off. But it has not totally fallen off. Slowly falling off. You have developed love for the devotion. It do coexist with the love for the world. In the words of Ramakrishna, it's like an ordinary fly. Sometimes it sits on the filth. Sometimes it goes and sits on the honey, the nectar. So you have developed love. It's not that you have developed tremendous dispassion. But at the same time, you are no more fully attached to the world. So that's being mentioned in the next line. That na nirvinno. That I am not having that supreme renunciation, nirvinno. Na atisakta. Neither I am extremely attached. Something in between. Bhakti yogasya siddhida. For such a person, bhakti yoga will result in siddhi, perfection. So, you will find that most of us belong to this category. That there is neither extreme detachment, we are yet to develop that, nor like the rest of the humanity, we are fully attached. That we have no awareness about the spiritual dimension of existence at all. No, nothing like that. Something in between. So for them, this bhakti yoga is something which is most suitable and it will lead to liberation. How? So now you have developed a sanskara. That bhakti. I have developed a little love for the thought of the divine. For the first time I have heard, I have developed that love. Now again I get involved with my worldly life. Most probably I forget totally. As I get again involved with my worldly life, I forget. And then suddenly again, the chance takes me to that environment. And immediately that samskara which was hidden, it has been created. That wells up. It comes as a smriti. Just like the way the bhoga samskara, bhoga smriti, here also ishta samskara, ishta smriti comes back. Now with that devotion, now you will start feeling that there should be a way out that I can culture it. It came to your heart for the first time without any culture. Now you have started treasuring it. Why like it? There should be some way to culture it. And then comes this sadhana bhakti. That how to nurture it. This sadhana bhakti, that then comes into the picture. And this, what is sadhana bhakti? As we have already studied, this Navadha bhakti, which Prahlada in the Bhagavatam says very nicely. What are these 9 practices? So this just like karma. This Navadha bhakti is just like the karma. That already the sanskara, that the love of God as sanskara has settled in my mind, though it's little, still it has settled. Whenever I get favorable circumstances, it comes back to my mind. And now it impels me to some action. And that action is the sadhana in the form of this. The scriptures say, to culture that, have these 9 types of practices. In the Bhagavatam, there is a sloka where we find Prahlada is instructing his other classmates that these are the things you have to practice to develop this bhakti. What are these? Sravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhya, Atma, Nivedanam. Iti Pungsa Arpita Vishnu, Bhaktischet Nava Lakshana. This 9. What are they? Sravana, hearing. That I have developed love for this life and teachings. The hearing also includes reading. If you can avail some satsang, that's of course the best. But of course always it's not possible. Even reading the books, that also comes under the category of Sravana. Listening, reading. With that, my devotion develops. I start fanning the fire of my devotion so that it can flare up. So Sravana, and then comes Kirtana, the second. Kirtana. It says Sravana is something passive. Kirtana, to sing loudly. To sing, to narrate. Just as every day in the evening, in our evening prayers, what we do, first we have our evening prayers, the songs, and then we read the gospel. So this singing, reading, so these all speaks of this kirtana, that I first read and then I actively get involved in the form of kirtana, and then smarana. So kirtana is something which is vocal, it's loud. Now, as to keep that devotion alive, what I do, that yes, it's not possible for me to always resort to kirtana. Most probably I have to take care of my day-to-day activities. I am in my office, in my work field, I'm doing my household duties. I keep a part of my mind in the thought of the divine. That's the smarana. So these are the practices. I have to do it willfully. Smarana. Pada sevanam. Now pada sevanam literally means to serve the feet of the Lord. You will say, how is it possible? The Lord is, for me at present, is an abstract something. How can I serve the feet? So when we were studying this, we have indicated that God as the Vamana Avatara has indicated. What? That in 3 feet he has covered the entire existence. So this world is nothing but the feet of the Lord. So to serve each and every being, knowing them to be the manifestation of the divine, it is the Lord who is permeating the entire existence. In his 3 feet, he has permeated the entire existence. So to serve others, thinking them as the manifestation of the divine, is a seva, and that also is a type of pada sevanam. So this is also a practice, how to keep my mind always in the thought of the divine. And then archana. Archana speaks of this ritualistic worship. What's the idea behind the ritualistic worship, as we were studying previously? That whatever I like, I first offer it to the divine. How it helps me? If I like mango, I buy and immediately I just simply devour it, eat it. It speaks of my greed. But as we were saying, in Bhakti, there is no question of subjugation. Forcefully, I don't stop myself. What I do is I buy the mango. I will eat it. But first I offer it to the divine. Now it gets sanctified. And when I am taking it, my greed is being converted into devotion. The divine has got associated with that. So Atmavat Deva Sevanam. That's the basic concept behind Archana. Vandana. Vandana means that I am always aware of that Archana and Vandana, there is a very subtle difference. Both means to worship. Here it means Atmavat Deva Sevanam and Vandana. Now see, even when as a householder, what I do, that I most probably like mango, the same example. I buy it, I myself take it, it is greed. But being the father, what I do, I buy it, bring home and share it with my family members, my children, my wife. Then is it something which is spiritual? No. Why? That Vandana will say, what happens? When I am first offering it to the Lord, that idea is there. He is the Paramatma, the soul of my soul. The divine attributes I am aware of that. With that I am serving, then it becomes Vandana. Otherwise, it just becomes serving any other human beings, thinking him to be just a mortal being. So, for the Archana to be Vandana, I have to be always aware of the majesty of the Lord. With that, with a sense of gratitude, I serve. So that speaks of Vandana. And then Dasyam Sakhyam. I relate to the Lord as a servant. He is the Lord, I am the servant. And my devotion still grows. He is my friend. When I think myself as the servant and of the Lord, there is an idea of fear factor is there. If I do something wrong, He will punish me. If I do something good, He will reward me. To go beyond that idea, when I'm more established in my devotion, then the fear factor falls off. Just the way I can relate everything to my friend, I open my heart to God. I'm no more afraid. I know He is my friend. He is not going to punish me. He is going to sympathize with me. He is going to help me out from the situation. So that is Sakhya. And this last is the Atma Nivedana. You surrender yourself to the divine, knowing for certain that He is there to take care of you. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that if you give responsibility to a good person, he will never harm you. And God is the best person. He is the repository of all goodness. So how can you be doubtful about his disposition, what he is going to do. Whatever he does, apparently it may appear that it is not favorable for me. But I know Lord knows the best. Through what way he will take me, it is his responsibility. Whether it's pleasurable or not pleasurable, I have resigned myself to the divine. That's the Atma Nivedana. So these are the 9 practices which speaks of the karma. That the sanskara, that little love which I have developed, which came back as smriti and which has now impelling me to work on it. And this Navada Bhakti is the work. And this again creates karma sanskara. My devotion is increasing through that. And that creates a new set of vasana. What's the vasana? I will find now I have developed love for the divine. That it's not just that all those 9 practices I have to do as a sadhana. By doing that gradually, it has accumulated, and now I find I have developed a love for God. Now these things become secondary. All these 9 practices. It's not that I leave them. I still continue, but I continue because of the love, not because of them. To give an example, in a residential school, we will find there is a routine. The students, from the morning they have to go to the prayer, then there is the drill, then they go for have their breakfast, come from breakfast, they have their studies, then they go and have a shower, have a quick lunch, go to the school, come back from the school, have some refreshment, go for the evening. They have some period for some games, come back, they do some ablutions, again go for prayer, come back, study, and then go to sleep. Throughout the day, a disciplined routine has been made. Why? Because we know that most of the students are not having any affection for study, is having any love for, and they are not fond of study. So with the routine we have to bind them. So it is something like regulatory. But if a student has developed a love for the study, for that routine, is he not following the routine? He is following the routine. But that routine has become secondary. His love for the study will now always motivate him for the study. For the others, that routine is very important. Now for the one who has developed the love for study, he is not following the routine, he is following the routine. But his love for the study impels him for studying. For others, it is a routine which makes them to study, keep them within that bonds of that routine and impels them to study. But the one who has developed that love, though he is following the routine, but that's not which is impelling him. The love for the study is impelling him for his study. So now I will understand that the one who has developed that raga, that vasana, that devotion, that raga now becomes the impelling factor. So now you will understand this type of vasana is being termed as Raga Anuga Bhakti. Your devotion is now motivated by that raga. Now when you develop that raga, this Raga Anuga Bhakti, your vasana, now what will happen? As per my temperament, now to relate someone through love. Again there is a question of temperament. What's the question of temperament? That I may just relate to my master and the servant, but even the servant has a love for the master. You will find that those who are for generations, that there's the servant of a particular family, they also become like a family member. So it can be like dasya, my Lord is the master, I am his servant. It can be shanta. Shanta means what? That I am aware of the greatness of the Lord. I like to meditate upon him. That grandeur, I want to meditate upon the Ishwaratva of Ishwara. I relate to him through awe, through reverence. There's a shanta. Then comes dasya. Or if I've developed a more intense love, I want to relate to him as a friend, sakhya. Or vatsalya. That fear factor has totally fallen off. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that when your devotion grows, previously God was the magnet, you were a small iron filing. Now you become the magnet, God becomes the iron filing. As if you don't take care of the Lord, he will perish, he will suffer. I am there to take care of him. Vatsalya. And Madhura is the combination of all the bhavas. The relation between the two lovers, that intense. They forget all social norms. When the love becomes intense, you will find they don't listen to their parents, they don't listen to the society. That love makes them to break all the social norms. It's very intense, that Madhura. It's a culmination of all. In that you will find Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya and Vatsalya. Everything is mixed up there. As Sri Ramakrishna says very nicely, that the husband and wife sometimes are like friends. When the wife is feeding the husband, at that time she feels the same type of love as she feels when she is feeding the child. Vatsalya, Madhur is a culmination. It has a combination of all those bhavas. So it's a Madhura. So now that raga has developed. The way that raga, as per my temperament, I develop a particular bhava, particular specific bhava, and try to relate to the divine. Now from where these bhavas came? Very interesting. So now again we have to go back to that. Today's discussion is a bit technical, but it is necessary to understand that the idea of this Raganuga Bhakti. And now this idea of this Ragatmika Bhakti comes. That already we saw that what? That those exemplary sadhakas who have through many lives have already developed the love for the divine, for them God incarnates to enjoy the communion of that love. And they are the exemplary figures of that love. For them that love is something, their nature, ragatmika. How through generations, through lives together, their practice has transformed them. As our Bhakti Shastra, a very nice example has been given. What is that? That coal and diamond both are made of carbon. But what makes the difference between coal and diamond? The orientation of these carbon atoms, isn't it? So the same raga which I had for the worldly attachment, its orientation has changed. All the carbon orientation has changed. Now it is for Ishvara. So the coal has become diamond. So those who are the Ragatmika Bhaktas will find lives together they have practiced. And at last the same love, it is not that they have, like a yogi, they have got rid of love. The same love, its orientation has changed. The nature has changed. They are now have the spontaneous love for God, and they have related to God. In the Vrindavan Lila we find these gopis. They were the sadhakas for ages. Yashoda, that wonderful, that she is asking the Lord that what was that meritorious act I have done, that the Lord has incarnated as my child. I am feeding my breast to the one who is the Lord of the universe. And there the answer comes. The Lord says, you don't think that it is just by chance. For lives together, you have done intense tapasya. And then you wanted to have a child just like me. When I asked you for a boon, you said that I want a child like you. And now it was a big problem. I have to grant the boon. But in the entire universe, I didn't find anyone who is like me. So I was impelled to be born as your child. That's a wonderful idea. And then when he is born as a child, now this Yashoda's relation to Krishna is not something which she has to culture. It is spontaneous. So now as per our temperament, if I find that I have that tendency to relate to the Lord as a parent, then Yashoda becomes my ideal. She is the example of Ragatmika Bhakti. But for me, when I am practicing following her, that becomes Raga Anuga. I have developed that Raga. My nature is yet to be fully transformed. And I have a temperament, that bhava, that I have, like that Vatsalya bhava. Then I will be following the example of Yashoda. So she is the example of Ragatmika, and my practice becomes Raganuga. Similarly, if I want to relate to the Lord just the way the gopis related to the Krishna, in the Rasa Leela we see, that intense love. So then these gopis they are the examples of Ragatmika. They are not practicing. It is their nature. They have already transferred themselves. They have become that diamond. We are still the coal. By following them, we become gradually. So these gopis become my ideal. So now you will understand that once you develop raga, then as per your temperament, you will start following one of these 5 bhavas. These are major categories. There are many subcategories. Even Sakhya. Some Sakhya is having is associated with Dasya. Like Arjuna's Sakhya Bhava is along with Dasya. That though he considers Krishna as his Sakha, but still he has that idea, he is the Lord. I am just his servant. I am just the Nimitta Matra. He is working through me. But if you go to the Vrindavan Leela, there's the Gopas. They had no such idea. He's just our friend. They're teasing him. They are tasting some food, and that already defiled food they are offering to Krishna. There's no idea that he's the Lord. So even just the Sakha has so many categories. So we are not going to that. The major, there are 5 categories. So as per my temperament, I take them as the exemplary figure and start follow. This makes me remind of Swami Vivekananda's one statement. When Swami Vivekananda in his last days was in Belur Mutt, and the newly ordained these brahmacharyans, they went to Swamiji and said, please make some rules for us so that we can follow it to build our life. And then Swamiji says that, what you are speaking of rules? In this life, what has to be done, we have done. We, the direct disciples of Ramakrishna, have done more than that. Tora Shudhu Degeja. Degeja means the way a small child learns handwriting. The parent will write the alphabets, the teacher will write the alphabets, and the child will scribble over it. And then in the process, they also learn how to write. So Degeja means the scribbling over already written alphabets. So we have written in the page of life whatever has to be written. You just go scribbling over it. So this the one who has developed the raga, they have to scribble over the script of these ragatmika bhaktas to ripen their devotion, and then in lives together, their devotion will become so intense that they will be either associated with the divine in one of his incarnations, or they will be in the Golaka, in that celestial plane where God is always in eternal association of all these perfected souls, the Ragatmika Bhaktas. He will be either there, or God incarnates here to put an example to the humankind with whom they will experience that intense devotion here in this life. So this is the wonderful idea which we find in the Bhagavatam. So it's not that I have to get rid of my ragas, as has been spoken of in the yoga. Here comes the difference in the yoga and in the bhakti. The raga is okay. I just have to divert it from the worldly attachment entanglements to Krishna. If I have to love Krishna. Not only love. In the Bhagavatam we will find that all the enemies of Krishna, the Kamsa, those who are inimical towards him, when Krishna is annihilating them, they are getting absorbed in Krishna. So because raga is not the only klesha, dvesha, abhinivesha, they are also the klesha. So when you are intensely hating Krishna, what is happening? Constantly you are thinking of him. You will find that hatred is more intense than love. Love makes us think of the person whom I love. Hatred makes me more intense to think of that person whom I, though it is through hatred, but I'm constantly thinking of him. So that's why in Bhagavatam they say, Yena tena prakarena Krishne mano niveshayat. By hook or by crook. keep your mind in Krishna. That's a very interesting thing. Of course, the best way is through devotion, to enjoy that bliss of the communion of the divine. But if someone is relating to the divine through in the inimical way, he also is liberated, because he's constantly thinking of him. So that's why now you will understand that hinche shak shaker moddhe noy, michri mishtir moddhe noy. So all these kleshas, when it is diverted towards Krishna, it becomes the way for liberation. So this we have something more to discuss on this concept of Raganuga Bhakti. That all these ragas, all these bhavas, like Shanta, this Dashya, Sakhya, and then Vatsalya and Madhur, all these won't take you to that eternal companionship of the divine. The first two, the Shanta and the Dasya, they, like those pragya sanskara, can result in liberation. But the other three will result in the parabhakti. So that we will again take up in the next class. We will take some other topic. But before we proceed to the other topic, this will be our discussion first. That even when you have developed Raganuga Bhakti, that doesn't entail that you will end up in the Ragatmika Bhakti in the celestial, that highest celestial plane called the Golaka. It can also result in liberation if this bhava is Shanta and Dasya. The other three, of course, will result in that Parabhakti. So what's the result? What's the psychology behind that? That we will discuss in the next class before we enter into some other topic related to this Bhakti as enunciated in Shrimad Bhagavatam. So with this, we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskar.